Hey guys, welcome back to Fantasy Hub. Today's story is one of my favorites.
My name is Lindsay Bennett, and for 20 years, I thought I had everything figured out. I had my hat shop, Bennett's Bonnets, tucked away on Maple Street like a secret jewel box. I had Mark, my husband, who paid the bills and mowed the lawn and showed up to family dinners. I had a routine that felt as comfortable as an old sweater if you ignored the holes. I specialized in vintage-inspired pieces, the kind of hats that made women feel like they were starring in their own classic film. Cloche hats with delicate, beading, wide-brimmed sun hats that whispered of garden parties, fascinators that caught the light just so. Each hat told a story, and I was the storyteller, weaving dreams with felt and silk and ribbon. But somehow I'd forgotten to write my own story. The morning it all changed started like any other. I was in the shop early, steaming a particularly stubborn piece of wool felt when I heard the sharp tap of heels on the sidewalk outside. Through the lace curtains, I watched a woman pause at my window display, her silhouette sharp against the morning light. She stood there for a long moment, studying the vintage-inspired pieces I'd arranged with such care. There was something about the way she held herself, confident, unapologetic, like she knew exactly who she was and made no apologies for it. Then Mark burst through the door like a hurricane. "Lindsay, we need to talk." His voice had that edge to it, the one that meant he'd made a decision and expected me to fall in line. He thrust a manila envelope at me, and I knew before I opened it what it contained. Divorce papers. My hands trembled as I scanned the legal jargon. "Mark, what? You're bored, Lindsay?" "Not gay." He spat, and I realized with a jolt that he'd been watching me, studying me, cataloging every moment of distance between us. "This is just some midlife crisis. You'll get over it." The accusation hit me like a slap. Gay? I'd never even let myself think the word, let alone apply it to myself. But the way he said it, like it was something dirty, something to be ashamed of, made my chest tighten with a feeling I couldn't name. "I don't know what you're talking about," I whispered, but even as the words left my mouth, they felt like lies. "The way you look at women, Lindsay, the way you don't look at me, haven't for years." His laugh was bitter. "You think I'm stupid? You think I don't notice?" The door chimed then, salvation in the form of brass bells, and Mark's attention snapped to the entrance. The woman from the sidewalk stepped inside, and suddenly my small shop felt charged with electricity. "I'll be back," Mark muttered, shooting a suspicious glance at the newcomer. "This isn't over." The door slammed behind him, leaving me standing there with shaking hands and a heart that felt like it might crack open. I wanted to disappear, to sink into the floor and never face another human being again. But she was still there, the stranger who'd walked into the wreckage of my life. "I need a hat," she said, her voice like honey poured over gravel. "Something that says, 'I've just been kissed in the rain.'" I blinked at her, certain I'd heard wrong. "That's oddly specific." Her lips curved in a smile that seemed to hold secrets. "I'm an oddly specific woman." She was beautiful in a way that made my chest tighten not the soft, conventional beauty that magazines celebrated, but something sharper, more dangerous. Dark curls framed her face, and her eyes held a challenge that made me want to step closer and run away at the same time. "I'm Eloise Dumont," she said, extending a hand that was soft and warm and lingered just a beat too long in mine. "And you're having a terrible day." I laughed, and it came out shaky. "Is it that obvious?" "The divorce papers are still on your counter," she said gently. "And you look like you're about to shatter." Something about her directness, her complete lack of judgment, made me want to tell her everything. Instead, I focused on what I knew how to do. "Tell me about this hat," I said, grateful for the familiar territory. "What occasion calls for something that says 'kissed in the rain'?" Eloise moved through my shop like she belonged there, her fingers trailing over silk scarves and vintage hat forms. "I'm a stylist," she said. "I work with clients who want to reinvent themselves, to step into new versions of who they could be. And I have a client who's about to make a very brave choice." "What kind of choice?" Her eyes met mine, and I felt that electric charge again. "The kind that changes everything." What started as a simple commission became something much more complex. Eloise had very specific ideas about the hat. It needed to be dramatic but not theatrical, sophisticated but not stuffy. She wanted it to embody transformation, to be the kind of piece that made the wearer feel like they could conquer the world. "It's not just about the hat," she explained during our second meeting. "It's about the woman wearing it. She needs to feel like she's finally becoming who she was meant to be." I found myself staying late at the shop, working on the piece while Eloise sat in the corner chair, sometimes reading, sometimes just watching me work. Her presence was both calming and electrifying, like standing near a fire that could warm you or consume you. "You have beautiful hands," she said one evening, and I nearly dropped the needle I was threading. "They're just hands," I mumbled, but she shook her head. "No, they're not. They're the hands of someone who's spent years making others happy. When do you get to feel it?" The question hung in the air between us like a challenge. When did I get to feel happy? When did I get to feel beautiful? When did I get to feel anything? "I don't know," I admitted, and it was the most honest thing I'd said in years. Eloise stood and crossed to where I was working, her movements fluid and purposeful. She took my hands in hers, turning them over to study my palms, my calloused fingertips, the small scars from years of needlework. "These hands create beauty," she said softly. "They deserve to be cherished." My breath caught in my throat. This was dangerous territory, the kind of moment that could change everything. But instead of pulling away, I found myself leaning closer, drawn by something I couldn't name. "Eloise," I whispered, but I didn't know how to finish the sentence. She smiled, that secret smile that made my heart race. "I know," she said. "Me too." It was Eloise who suggested dinner. "To celebrate," she said. "The hat is nearly finished, and I think that deserves champagne." I almost said no. Almost claimed I needed to work late, or that Mark would be expecting me, or any of the dozen excuses I perfected over the years. But something in her eyes stopped me. "Okay," I said, but somewhere quiet. She chose a little bistro on the other side of town, the kind of place with dim lighting and intimate tables tucked into corners. As we settled into our seats, I felt like I was playing a part in someone else's life. "Tell me about your marriage," Eloise said, and I nearly choked on my wine. "What about it? What made you stay for 20 years?" The question was so direct, so cutting, that I wanted to deflect with humor or change the subject entirely. But there was something about the way she asked it, without judgment or agenda, that made me want to tell the truth. "Comfort," I said finally. "Safety. The feeling that I was doing what I was supposed to do. And no." I thought about Mark's angry words, about the divorce papers still sitting on my counter, about the way I'd been sleepwalking through my life. "Now, I don't know what I'm supposed to do." Eloise leaned forward, her hand covering mine on the table. "What do you want to do?" The simple question undid me. When was the last time someone had asked me what I wanted? When was the last time I'd even allowed myself to consider it? "I want to feel alive," I whispered. "I want to feel like I'm living my own life instead of the life everyone else expects me to live." Her thumb traced across my knuckles, and I felt that touch like electricity. "Then live it," she said simply. That's when I felt at her ankle, brushing against mine under the table, the deliberate pressure of her leg against mine. It was such a small thing, but it sent heat flooding through my body in a way that made me dizzy. What if someone sees us? I whispered, suddenly aware of how this must look. Two women, sitting too close, touching too intimately. Eloise's hand moved to my thigh, warm and sure through the fabric of my skirt. Let them, she said. And then, because the universe has a sense of humor, Mark burst through the restaurant door. I saw him before he saw me, his face scanning the room with that particular intensity that meant he was looking for trouble. My first instinct was to pull away from Eloise, to put distance between us, to pretend this wasn't what it looked like. But Eloise's hand tightened on my leg, steadying me. Don't, she said quietly. Don't run. Mark's eyes found me, and I watched his expression shift from confusion to understanding to rage. He crossed the restaurant in 3 quick strides, his presence turning every head in the room. Lindsay, what the hell? He stopped short when he saw Eloise, his eyes dropping to the table where her hand had been moments before. Hello, Mark, I said, and my voice was steadier than I felt. You're not gay, he said, the words coming out like an accusation. You're just lost. The word hung in the air between us gay. He said it like it was a weapon, like it was something shameful and wrong. And maybe a year ago, a month ago, even a week ago, I would have shrunk from it. But sitting there, with Eloise's steady presence beside me and the taste of possibility on my tongue, I felt something shift inside me. Something that had been sleeping for 20 years suddenly woke up. You don't get to tell me who I am, I said, my voice shaking not with fear, but with fury. Not anymore. I stood up so quickly that my chair scraped against the floor, and my wine glass went tumbling, the red liquid spreading across the white tablecloth like spilled blood. The entire restaurant was watching now, but I didn't care. For the first time in my life, I didn't care what anyone thought. I reached for Eloise's face, my hands trembling as I cupped her cheeks. She looked up at me with those challenging eyes, and I saw myself reflected there, not the woman I'd been, but the woman I could become. Lindsay, she whispered, and her voice held both warning and invitation. I kissed her. Not a gentle, tentative kiss, not a questioning kiss, but a kiss that said everything I'd been too afraid to say for 20 years. A kiss that tasted like wine and possibility, and the kind of freedom that comes from finally telling the truth. When I pulled back, the restaurant was dead silent. Mark stood there, his mouth open, his face cycling through expressions of shock and rage and something that might have been grief. This is who I am, I said, my voice carrying across the room. This is who I've always been. The divorce proceedings were ugly. Mark fought everything, the shop, the house, even the wedding. China his mother had given us. He spread rumors through our social circle, painting me as a woman who'd lost her mind, who'd thrown away a good marriage for a fantasy. But here's what he didn't understand. I wasn't throwing anything away. I was finally picking up the pieces of myself I'd been dropping for 20 years. Eloise was there through all of it, steady and unflinching. When Mark's lawyer tried to paint our relationship as evidence of my mental instability, she sat in the courtroom wearing one of my hats, a bold, unapologetic creation that made her look like she could take on the world. He's scared, she told me one evening as we went through legal documents at my kitchen table. He's scared because you're not asking for his permission anymore. She was right. For the first time in my adult life, I was making decisions based on what I wanted, not what was expected of me. It was terrifying and exhilarating and completely necessary. The hat was finished on a Tuesday. The one Eloise had commissioned, the one that was supposed to say, I've just been kissed in the rain. I'd poured everything into it, my confusion, my fear, my newfound courage, my growing love for the woman who'd walked into my life and changed everything. It was beautiful, dramatic and bold and unapologetic, just like the woman who'd inspired. It's perfect. Eloise breathed when I showed it to her. It's exactly what she needs. I asked, confused. I thought this was for a client. Eloise smiled that secret smile, the one that had captivated me from the first day. It is, she said. It's for you. The words hit me like a revelation. All this time, she'd been talking about me. I was the client who needed to reinvent herself, to step into a new version of who I could be. I was the woman who needed to feel like she could conquer the world. Try it on, she said softly. I lifted the hat with trembling hands, feeling the weight of it, the careful construction, the hours of love I'd sewn into every stitch. When I placed it on my head, I felt transformed, not into someone else, but into myself. Looking in the mirror, I saw a woman I'd never seen before, confident, radiant, alive. How do I look? I asked. Eloise stepped behind me, her hands resting on my shoulders. Like you've just been kissed in the rain, she said. And then she kissed me right there in front of the mirror, and I understood what she meant. I looked like a woman who'd been loved, who'd been chosen, who'd finally chosen herself. We opened Bennett and Demont 6 months later. The shop was bigger than my old one, with space for both hats and styling services. Eloise brought her clients, women, who were ready to reinvent themselves, and I created the pieces that would help them do it. The day we hung the sign, I felt like I was finally breathing after holding my breath for 20 years. Bennett and Demont, bespoke millinery. Our names together, our lives intertwined, our future stretched out before us like silk ribbon waiting to be shaped. Partners, Eloise said, stepping back to admire our work. In every way, I replied and kissed her temple. The first customer who walked through our doors was a woman in her 50s, recently divorced, looking for something to wear to her daughter's wedding. She wanted to feel beautiful, she said. She wanted to feel like herself again. I knew exactly how she felt. Are you two partners? She asked, glancing between Eloise and me. For a moment, I felt that old flutter of panic, the instinct to deflect or lie or make it seem like less than it was. But then I looked at Eloise, at the life we'd built together, at the woman I'd become. In every way, I said, and meant it. You know what I learned? You don't wake up one morning and suddenly know who you are. It's not like a light switch flipping on, revealing a truth that was always there waiting to be discovered. Instead, it's like learning to see yourself in a new light. It's like trying on a hat you never thought you could wear and discovering it fits perfectly. It's like finding out that the life you thought you were supposed to live was just the dress rehearsal for the life you were meant to live. Mark was wrong about one thing. I wasn't confused. I was finally beautifully, completely clear. And Eloise, she was right about everything. I did have the touch of someone who'd spent years making others happy, but she taught me something Mark never could. I deserve to feel that happiness too. The hat still sits on the shelf in our shop, the one that started it all. Sometimes I catch women trying it on, and I see that same transformation I felt the moment when you realize you're not just wearing a hat. You're wearing possibility. That's what love does, I think. It doesn't change who you are. It reveals who you've always been. It gives you permission to be beautiful, to be bold, to be unapologetically yourself. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, it comes disguised as a woman who knows exactly what she wants and isn't afraid to ask for it. I need a hat, she said. Something that says, I've just been kissed in the rain. What she gave me was so much more than a hat. She gave me myself. And that, I've learned, is the most beautiful thing of all.